Welcome aboard. I'm Captain Rick. This is Yacht Elf, the oldest active racing yacht in America. A real challenge to sail because there's over a mile of strings on this boat. And the bigger challenge is cooking in this galley. It's a small, tight galley, and I'm a big boy. But if I don't keep the crew fed, they get mutinous. And I don't want that on my watch. Okay, I got to make dinner for the crew, and what I've decided to do is do my Scallop Mountain. And I've gone across the road here from the museum to get some really nice ocean scallops from Big Al's, and I can't wait to get them all going. What we'll do, we'll marinate them first, and then we're going to take a little time to go through the museum with Kate Levy, and she's going to tell us all about how the museum looked 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or that kind of thing, and bring us up to speed, talk to us about a lot of the exhibits. And I just absolutely love home porting Elf at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. So what I'm going to do is get started. I've gotten some scallops. I'm going to show you we're going to do just a nice little batch of scallops. These are beautiful ocean scallops, and nice and fresh and very, very fine. What I like to do is to marinate them a while in lemon juice. Now sometimes I take and make a drizzle, raspberry drizzle at home, and I have not had a chance to do that on this trip, but I will do that on another trip and then teach you how to do that, because it is real nice to drizzle over the top and adds a little sweetness. But instead today we're going to use some fresh strawberries. Take and move it around a little bit, make sure everything is all kind of soaked around. I was doing pretty well there for a bit. So you can see we've got the juice of a lemon in there, and these are just beautiful big ocean scallops that I'm just going to take a little bit of time, maybe an hour or two in the icebox. So we'll do that and take a break and go for a museum tour with Kate.
I want to give you a sense of what this would have been like. If you had visited here 110 years ago, 100 years ago, what would you have actually seen? Because so much of the Chesapeake appears relatively untouched that, you know, it can be, you know, a little confusing when you hear about what you're actually seeing. So the Crab Claw restaurant was actually constructed on top of a steamboat pier. So I want you to imagine that we're looking at a harbor filled with not yachts and sailboats and motorboats and recreational boats, but we're looking at a yacht that's full of working boats. So we're talking dingy skipjacks, you know, with, you know, grimy oyster dust on them. We're looking at log canoes that are ready to go out for the day. We're looking, you know, at bug eyes, you know, way down to the water in the summertime, maybe carrying produce. And then so you've got the steamboat pier where steamboats, which drew relatively shallow amounts of water, would come up to towns like St. Michael's, and they'd bring cargo, they'd bring passengers. Now later on in the 19th century, what you saw happening is steamboats originally would have been, you know, bringing goods and services back and forth, but they started to bring people that were looking for trips to get away from Baltimore, get away from Washington, to places on the Eastern Shore. I mean, the Eastern Shore is relatively isolated, relatively untouched, so for them, the Eastern Shore then would have been sort of old school and bucolic and, you know, like a getaway destination. And houses like this, when they were originally constructed, were really meant for families, but they were edited over time to make them suitable for vacation homes. And the architectural additions that you can see are the porches. So the idea is that you want to invite people to spend time outside, and they'd be getting off these steamboats, you know, staying at places like this for a week or two at most. But then I'd like to contrast it with also what the museum's campus was. So you'd be coming to these houses, right, to get away from the industrial urban areas, you know, Baltimore, bigger cities. Washington. But our campus, which is now, you know, old buildings, boat shops, restoration, our lighthouse, at that time was an industrial area. It was a seafood packing area and a lumber mill. So imagine how bad Baltimore must have been if your getaway was going to be next to like 3 stories high of rotting oyster shells and crab packing, all the sounds and smells that are associated with industry.
Oh my God. Yep.
So it does give you a sense of just not only how much the bay has changed, but also this particular area has changed, and how the museum represents the changes that would be happening, you know, Chesapeake Bay wide.
Sure. Oh, that's great, because we don't think about that. We come here now and we see the beautiful parts of the bay, and this is one of the gems of the bay, and I love being here, you know. So it's great to see the transition and what we have now.
Yeah, and it's great at the museum because it's not only our exhibits tell the story of the Chesapeake, but our campus does as well. So
absolutely,
it's another way to kind of draw people in.
That's great.
So do you want to go inside and we can talk a little bit about the history of our campus?
Oh, love to. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kate. Let's go.
You're welcome. All right. Where we are standing now, if you dug down 20 feet, you'd find compacted oyster shell all the way down, because this was a major oyster producing area in the 19th century. So just like St. Michael's Harbor would have been full of skipjacks and log canoes and bug eyes and boats and all the vessels associated with oystering, so our campus would have been full of the buildings associated with oystering. So packing houses and all types of industrial areas, parking lots, you name it. And when this is literally the land that oysters built, because when they needed more land, we would be standing in marsh 200 years ago.
Sure.
But 100 years ago, anytime they needed extra land to build on, they just added more oysters and added more oysters as fill. So our entire campus is just compacted oyster shell that we built on top of.
Love it.
Now, the Hooper Strait Lighthouse, again, people think it was always here, you know, because it's really become a symbol of St. Michael's, but it was moved here. Can you believe that?
Absolutely.
The museum was really started by citizens in the area that noticed that the waterman's way of life was declining. They weren't
Justin Vita Van Lennen.
Exactly. We weren't. From elf fame. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, just like they helped to preserve the elf, so they also helped to preserve this area.
Wonderful.
And they were really interested in, you know, maintaining this way of life and making sure that they shared it with other people that may not have known that this is the way that the Chesapeake was when they first came. So initially they started collecting objects and items associated with watermen under the Talbot County Historical Society, but very quickly they outgrew that relationship.
Next generation.
So what we see here is, you know, they had these objects, they were able to buy those buildings that we talked about, the Victorian houses. Those were the first museum exhibits, but then they wanted really to continue to grow. So the symbol of that growth, they needed a big object. And in 1965, the Hooper Strait Lighthouse was decommissioned by the U.S. Coast Guard. They were moving to a buoy system. They no longer needed keepers to live in the lighthouses and keep the lights going the way that they had for 150 years. So what you saw were these traditional Chesapeake screw pile lighthouses, really icons of the bay, being shuttered and sort of left to just die. So Vita and Gus were able to get the funds together, like you said, Rick, to bring the lighthouse up here, and they cut it like a cake. They cut the top off, they put the 2 halves on 2 barges, and they brought them all the way up. And we've had visitors here to the museum talk about, they can remember as children their parents packing a picnic, bringing a blanket, spreading it all out to watch the lighthouse coming down the miles.
They let the school children out early to come and
That's right, come and watch. So when the lighthouse was put into place here, it really became the object that the rest of the museum grew around. It was followed by
focal point.
And it really spurred a lot of the locals to kind of, you know, feel involved with what we were doing. So it was followed up by the Point Lookout Tower, the bell tower that you can see here, and then other vessels, the Edna Lockwood, for example, and other sort of iconic things that people associate with the museum when they come to visit. Now, since we have had the Hooper Strait Lighthouse, we've built lots of different exhibits here. We've got now not only exhibits that focus on history in general, but history that focuses on specific topics, like the Oystering on the Chesapeake exhibit, of course our boat shop where we maintain our fleet of historic vessels. We've also got exhibits to talk about the transition in the Bay from working to play. We've got exhibits that focus on Waterman's Wharf, where we talk about the animals and watermen and what it is that watermen do on a day-to-day basis. And we do a lot of educational programs here. Kind of looks a lot like you, Rick.
Hey, Captain Lerman was a good-looking guy, you know, so and I know he did a good job on the boat. Kept everyone fed and kept everyone happy, and caught a lot of oysters. So
that's true.
Hey, Captain Lerman, thank you so much for doing a fine job.
Katie, come aboard. This is a real cool little boat. I know the kids would love it. I love the steering up here. I love the steering back here, and I got the throttle and the gears all set to go. I think we're going to take off at high speed. Put your seatbelt on.
All right.
All right. Let's go.
I need my PFD.
Get those PFDs going, and we're going out.
When we were in Baltimore with Elk for the celebration, we had so many kids come aboard, and it was like, wow.
When I think about the things that really make working here such a wonderful experience and make visiting here such a wonderful experience, it's opportunities like that. You know, wonderful. To share a waterfront campus, to share exhibits, to share priceless objects with people. Sure. And help show them that it's part of who they are. It's part of their history too.
Absolutely.
It's very cool.
Katie, let's sail this boat off into the sunset and have a great time.
I think you're right. Let's do it.
I'll get the picnic basket and we'll go.
Okay, that was a fantastic tour, learning all about the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum from then and now, and all the educational programs that Kate works with. I am very impressed, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of. And now we're back here on board, and I'm getting ready to do my finish on this recipe and get the crew kind of fed, and here we go. What I like to do is take my scallops, and instead of putting breadcrumbs down and what have you, I like to take and roll them and kind of this is what I use for crusting. And what I also like to do is to add just a little bit of my Old Bay spice. I don't like to overdo it with any of my spices. You can always add more later. Old Bay has a lot of salt in it and just a good flavor, but it's the type of thing that easy does it. You can always, like I say, add more later, and it's no problem. So I'm going to just take them out one at a time and kind of roll them around here and get them kind of covered a little bit with the crusting material, the potato, and then set them on the edge of the plate. So here we are, we're getting all these all set up, and scallops cook rather quickly. So what I want to do is make my mountain next, and that's just simply going to be a matter of getting another package of the instant potatoes and putting together my mountain, and it works out pretty well. We're making a mountain part of the dish, and this is what I use, the instant mashed potatoes with garlic, and that adds another little zip to it, which I kind of like. I've got the water boiling, and all I'm going to do is make sure I don't spill it all over, and just add it to the pot and stir it around, and then we're going to sidetrack it and get the scallops going. Okay, I like to stir it in as I go and make sure it all works in well. And now we can turn this off altogether, and we're going to have our mountain here before you know it. Now this is coming up nicely, and we'll sidetrack it in a minute, and I'll have the scallops done before you know it. And these dishes are nice because they're rather quick, and you see it's only a 2-pot meal, and you can feed an army, so to speak, or I should say a navy. So you can see there's a little mountain kind of quality here that it'll stand up pretty nicely. So we're going to sidetrack that and get the scallops going. Just realizing that the pan needs a little bit more olive oil, and we're just going to add a little now, and not a lot. We just want to keep it so it all works well. Now, funny thing is with this stove, it's a gimbaled stove, and as we cook, the olive oil wants to roll side to side, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on that, because I need the olive oil to do its job for me, you know. And we're just about ready to do it, and I'll show you kind of the olive oil just kind of getting ready to almost bubble, and that's about what we want as we enter the scallops in the pan. We want them to immediately start cooking. We don't want it to be too low heat. We want it probably about 325 in actual heat, and 325 there makes it really hot here. But we're just about there. I can tell just by a couple features here on board, and you can see the olive oil kind of takes and puts a little ripple in it, and you can see it's beginning to smoke just very lightly. So that's about it. So I'm going to turn that heat down just a little and make our entry with our scallops. All right, and you'll probably hear them kind of start to sizzle. So we got to be quick with them all. I can hear them. Can you hear them? Ouch. Got to be careful with the entry factor here. And as I said, it only takes a few minutes for scallops. You do not want to overcook them. And they are doing beautifully. And I'll just give you a quick view of what we're doing so that you can see a little better. And that way we'll also move the, see what I'm saying, as far as the olive oil being just nice and warm, and I should say nice and hot, but not too hot. And we're just trying to get them cooking and browning that potato. And we can add a little bit more Old Bay if we decide we want a little more flavor as we go. It's a matter, you can add that afterwards if it's not up to your flavoring capability. You can't take it out. That's the other side of it. And when I take and am cooking, getting ready to add flavor, many times if I'm not sure about something, I'll just put a little in my hand. I'll demonstrate here. If I have any flavor that I'm doing that I'm not sure of, I'll just take a little in my hand like this, wet my finger, and just put a little on my tongue. And I do that with a lot of different seasonings and flavors, and it gives me a better feel for not just the flavor, but how much I want to use. And that's a good thing to think about, particularly on a boat. I don't measure things, as you can tell. It's a shake, shake, shake. We're just about ready to flip these. I'm going to get that lid on a little better. Okay. In about 30 seconds, we'll do the first flip, and I think they'll be just right. And about another 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, we'll take them off and build our mountain, which I think you'll find to be, kind of fun. I enjoy making things that are not just, kind of good-looking, colorful, but tasty, in a diverse variety of flavors. And many times I add something that people say, wow, what is that? And I like that. I can take each one individually with these tongs and do it, and I can also determine how well they're going. And this is perfect. I'm going to bring them over and woo! I think we're doing the seared version here today. Perfect. Absolutely wonderful. One of my favorite items today that we visited, that Katie was telling me about, was the garden. The gardens in the back by the Mitchell House are really kind of interesting. It talks about what the early Native Americans ate, all the way up through the current day garden varieties that we eat today. Why they're so important to understand the foods that people ate of the times. So I particularly like that, being a gardener myself. Okay, I'm going to just double check these. We're about 30 seconds away, and I'm going to just pick up one and see how the bottom is, because they don't need long to cook. Let's try one here. Up just a touch more and we'll be there. It's good to monitor and keep an eye on, because they go so quickly and they can get past you, and if you're not really careful, you'll lose them. And it's too special with seafood to lose. As far as I'm concerned, they all are. I like doing this kind of thing. It's showing people all the different ways of doing things, and on the boat you got to be creative because you do not have much space. Okay, so here we go. As I told you, the mountain is really kind of working up. That's great. I'm gonna do the mountain right here. The mountain, of course, being the potatoes. And then I take and bring the potatoes, or I should say the scallops, up and around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. Okay, now where did I leave my tongs? They're right here. Okay, let's see. Look at that. Perfect. I'm going to just put that side up. I think I'm going to do that with each of them. Oh boy, they smell so good. I can't wait. My crew better like all of this effort. Okay. There we go. This is the St. Michael's Winery Chardonnay 2010, which is a good pairing, whereas long spice is also, and it's a matter of you choose what works best for you. So I'm going to get this ready and all set for another wonderful evening of dining aboard Yacht Elf. I think that's about it. Okay, we have here Scallop Mountain, developed by Captain Rick for the crew aboard Yacht Elf. All I can say at this point is bon appetit. Damn it! Damn it! I've had enough. This is it.